Well, she helped bring Anne Hathaway into a musical fever dream on Amazon's Modern Love. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and I'm so excited to sit here with Kelly Devine, choreographer from Modern Love, Olivier winner, Tony nominee. Thank you for joining me, Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
So, you provide the choreography for this one episode of the installment, that Take Me As I Am, Whoever I Am. Mm-hmm. And Anne Hathaway plays this woman who she has bipolar disorder, and when she's up and on a great day, a musical takes over as she's looking for love. And so I'm curious, like, what did that aspect of her factor into your creation of the choreography at all?
I think the conversations, John Carney, who's the director of that episode and also wrote that episode, I'm a huge fan of his, and he was just delightful to work with. And he's written some things. He's done some of my most favorite movies, Once and Sing Street. And so having a conversation with him about what this could be and where the idea came from, the idea that at your best moment, when you're feeling your greatest, your life can feel like a over-the-top exciting musical. So with that idea, you could just sort of run with it. And we knew it was going to be set of her coming out of a grocery store, and inside the grocery store, it starts to bubble. It's like when she starts to meet this, young, sweet guy that's chatting her up at the grocery store, it feels out of the blue, and you can tell her the way they connect in their conversation just gets a little more intimate and exciting. And all of the people around her in the grocery store pick up on that, and that's sort of the beginning of the musical vibe of it. Little touches, but then once we go out, and she's definitely going to have a date with this guy, that's when the whole thing just bubbles over and turns into a big production number.
I was wondering about those scenes in the grocery store when you see little bits of dance come out, because did you get a chance to rehearse inside the fairway? How do you incorporate a grocery store layout into your rehearsal process?
It's so funny. I did a bunch of pre-pro with some of my dancers, right? And so what I did, because we actually didn't even know what grocery store we were going to be in, so I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have plans. There was nothing laid out, so it was just game on. So I pretended that what would you do if you were to dance as you were checking out? So we did all this stuff where we're grooving along a line while the food is going along the conveyor belt, and then the checker do. It's very fun and boisterous, and then the bagger is bag toss. It's all very fun, like Happy Villagers. And then I made up a section like the cheese when you go to where you can sample cheese. So I did a whole number with the people around it, grabbing a stick, boom, sampling the cheese, turning out, switching around. And that actually I thought could double for any kind of vegetable or fruit if we were to encounter one in the place that we were shooting. And then I went to aisles, and I pretended like we were in a canned aisle. So I had people going through each other like this, grabbing a can, looking at it, turning, swirling through. I basically created all these moments that I thought that we would be able to find in a grocery store. And as you know it, TV always changing. So, we really were scrambling that day. I mean, John had laid out how we were going to do this one scene. I had bits of choreography for everybody. We're like, great, boom, 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 you guys go. They send everybody to hair and makeup. We come back to film, and John's like, okay, so we should make some changes. And he sort of changed the whole pattern. So we were all flying by the seat of our pants, but that's what's exciting about it too. I had incredible dancers, and everybody knows what they're doing. So we just went for it. But it did get a little more complicated because he wanted to add more things as the day went on. Like when Gary and Anne were at the fruit section talking about peaches, he wanted more spontaneous things to happen. But it was tricky because you wanted to sort of time it out at the right time with the scene work and the dialogue. So they put all of the dancers in earwigs, and I had a master microphone, and I was in a remote part of the grocery store, so you couldn't hear me so much. And I would just say, okay, go do a chaîné. Throw the orange up in the air. It was insane. So I was just shouting out and making stuff up that they would just do in the moment. I'd be like, 5, 6, do a jump and go. Suit and do. It was so
in the
fun.
moment choreo.
Yeah, it was great. And then, you know, we'd been there so long and we were a little slap happy by the end of the day, but I was like, okay, now everybody on the floor. I was like, nope, just kidding. So they were like, I was just messing with them, but it was a really, really fun day.
Yeah. And you mentioned John Carney, too, who obviously has done Sing Street and Once and is not a stranger to musical moments. Did he have a specific vision for what he wanted in the choreography? What was that collaboration like?
You know, he wasn't too specific about steps, but he wrote the music and he wrote that song and he wrote the episode. So I really knew what he wanted, and he liked the idea of, we talked about the parking lot. We talked about, you know, having dancers being able to dance on cars. He liked the idea at the end. One thing he really wanted specifically is Adam Perry, who's the dancer that I chose to be Anne Hathaway's partner. At the very end of the number, he sort of gets up on the car to do sort of something really big and like just a big strong move, and he slips and falls on the hood of the car, which was kind of it's such a great idea because it sort of tips back off to when we get back into her home and following her life. She has another episode, so it was kind of like the just like a little subtle tee off that this moment of feeling great is not going to last much longer, and she could have another episode just on the way.
Right. And Anne Hathaway is obviously the lead of that. And was anything specifically like created around her abilities? What was it like working with her on this project?
You know, she's such a pro and she's so unbelievably talented, and she's obviously had dance training. So I went in and I choreographed something that I thought she would like and I thought would feel good and she could feel free in it and it would feel joyous and not too complicated because I didn't want to have her to struggle. We didn't have a lot of time, and, you know, I wanted her to just feel really good about it, that she could just nail it. So we just started teaching it to her and she was fabulous. She's a quick study. She's takes it so seriously. We rehearsed really hard, focused, was game to try anything. I think there were maybe a couple changes that we made just because it felt better on her body and it looked better. And, you know, that's my job, is to just make whoever, I'm only as good as the people that are doing my choreography. So I just wanted her to feel so, I wanted her to feel like just a professional dancer because she was surrounded by them, and she did, and she looked great. And it was, I really enjoyed working with her. She's an incredible woman.
Where do you get sort of like your inspiration when you're looking for, like when you're crafting a dance piece? Does it come just from the script? You immediately get an image in your head. You have to work off of other images or themes. Where does your first kind of bout of inspiration come from?
That's a really good question. I think it's kind of different for everything. Sometimes it's the song. Sometimes I'll sort of visualize the music and have an idea of like what should happen there. Oh, that music lifts there. That should be a big jump or a lift and then sometimes it's just, sometimes it's like sort of based on a certain style, like it's swing dance or like it's a salsa something. And I just sort of put that in my own hopper of knowledge of things, because I did study lots of different types of dancing, and I sort of just put it in a blender and think about the character and who's doing it and have them in mind while I'm putting it together. Like there's this one actor, Johnny Bouchamp, who's on Katie Keene, and I worked with him a lot on that show. And he has some very specific little things that he does. He always does like a little kick out of nowhere. And I'm like, Johnny, watch the kicks. Let's count how many kicks there are. But he has his very own unique way of how he moves. And we did a lot of numbers where it were solos of his. And so I would take that and we would just work together and just mold something on him. And then it's like its own little dance, just putting it together.
Yeah. I've always been very intrigued by you have a way of like incorporating like pedestrian movement into your dance a lot, because you've choreographed Rocky on Broadway and Come From Away, and both of those things, like one has to include boxing, and how do you get that incorporated? And Come From Away is about people who are just everyday folk who are not dancers. So how is that something you approach it? And you see it a little bit in like the aisles of the grocery store too. Is that like something you're specifically intrigued by and focused on?
I'll say honestly, I take every show is just case by case. It's its own thing because Diana has its own vocabulary, and Rock of Ages obviously it's its own thing, and it could not be more different than Come From Away. And Zhivago was Russian dancing and soldiers and war. So I think with something, honestly, I think it's a tone thing, and I try to pay attention to what the tone is. And I knew with Rocky, for example, it was hard for people. I think the idea of Rocky being a musical made people giggle a little, and they're like, "What? They're going to be a bunch of dancing boxers, right?" And that was not what we were going for at all. So the challenge was how do you actually make this movement feel like choreography, like you're getting a production number, but it doesn't feel pushed like you have boxers that are actually dancing. Right. So it was taking there's four moves. There's like uppercuts. There's just like 4 moves that are real boxing moves. And my idea was, how can I put them together in a way and add people doing it so it turns into, essentially it turns into a dance, but it really is truly gritty and muscular and feels like these are real boxers. And everybody was training boxing at the time. And we started every day. Stephen Hoggett just put us all through the ringer, and I felt like I had to do it. So we were just, boxing training every morning, and it was about the tone. It was like, you have to believe that these guys, it's dangerous in the ring, and that this is what they do for a living. They get in a ring and they beat each other up. It's an unbelievable sport, but you just can't have them doing like, a kick line. It's just like you have to.
That wouldn't quite work.
No, unless it was a parody. But and the same thing with Come From Away. It was just, the whole team, we got to go to Gander, and we did concerts for them before we even opened on Broadway, so that town, Gander, could see what we were doing. And it was thrilling and scary, and our actors were freaking out because they were, doing Newfoundland accents in front of the people that they're playing on top of it, so it was very nerve-wracking, but the response was overwhelming, and it was a wonderful trip. And I really got to meet these people and understand, why they are the way they are and why they're so kind, and like what, they really are inviting and warm and funny. And so now we're dealing with this musical that's, on the backdrop of this horrific thing that happened, but there's this little piece of goodness that came out of it, and it's these people, and they're real people. So they're not going to be doing pirouettes and fatwas, and, it's not right. It's not the right tone. So it was really like, how do I capture all the elements of dance? Like, they do dance a lot. They dance like, it's like a Celtic sort of jig. There's a lot of dancing, and they do kitchen parties at home, and they hang out and they groove. And I wanted to find the balance of that, just sort of the naturalistic movement of them enjoying music and enjoying being at a tavern, having a drink. And then on the other side of it too was like, how do I find the emotional value in certain moments of the show? What's it like, almost like trying to make like a moving painting in a way. So there's like this one number called Something's Missing, where the turntable's rotating really slowly, and we're checking in with every single person and their characters, where they are before they return home. And it's this really beautiful song. And so I gave, each person has an individual move. There's 12 of them that happen like on every, echo of a lyric, and each one does something completely different, and it's kind of in a slow-mo way, and it created a bit of a tapestry. And so you can focus in on any one of them, and collectively, even though they're all doing something different, you get the feeling that it's going to be hard to go home, because this was such a wonderful experience, but I'm going to miss those people. And what is my home going to look like now? So, stuff like that. You just try to dig deep and think about, the story.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Diana in there, which was the Broadway project you were newly working on right now, which sadly, as Broadway is shut down during this pandemic that's ongoing, has taken theater away from us for a bit. What do you do? I mean, I think you got through 9 previews, so what do you do to like keep that fresh in your head? Are you like working on that in a different way on your own?
Interesting. Me and the guys, we have been getting together a couple times a week since Broadway did close. And we just started picking apart all of the moments that we knew weren't good enough for us. Things like we grade them. We're like, okay, well, that scene is a solid B+. How do we make it an A? And we've been doing that ever since. And we've done a lot of really great work, and it's really exciting. And you just never get time like that. We were supposed to open March 31st. I mean, and the day that we got the call that we had to go to close up shop was, we were in the middle of putting in restaging a number. So I'm sure that'll get restaged again. And I'm sure, it's been interesting to have video to watch from. So you really, it's a little maddening too, because you're like, I like that, but do I need to change it? Like because you never stop tinkering with stuff. But yeah, I'm really excited when we do get the chance to do this show again. It's been an incredible time for all of us to come together and really look at this and examine it from head to toe and just make it as strong of a production that we are proud of.
Right.
Yeah.
And I should say, while you were doing work on Diana, you also have like shows running concurrently with that. You have The Rock of Ages off Broadway. You have Come From Away still running on Broadway. And you also were working on Katie Keene, the TV show, which is the spinoff from Riverdale, set in New York. So how do you juggle all that? Because Katie Keene seems like there's a lot more than just like one dance sequence that Modern Love had. So how do you juggle and have time for all of these projects that are so demanding?
I will tell you, just to toss it in, because it was a moment that I thought, oh God, what am I doing? But I was also doing Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice at the Signature Theater. And that was all kicking off. So we were in previews for Diana. The end of the season was coming up from Katie Keene and then Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice. And I was just sort of going from thing to thing to thing all day. And some days looked like Katie Keene, we'd have rehearsal at 5 a.m. down at Silver Cup Studios. So I would do that for a couple hours, and then I would race over to rehearsal during the day before a preview that night. So I would do that for Diana, and then I would run down 42nd Street to the Signature and catch the end of that rehearsal. And then depending on what was happening, I'd either go to a preview of Bob Carroll and Ted and Alice that night. So I'd have notes for the next day, or I'd be at the Diana preview. It was insane. It was really insane, and it was super exciting, and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, this may never happen again. You just need to run with it. It was wild. And I have the most amazing associates in the world. Charlie and Andrew Turtletop and Ricky Hines, I would not be able to do any of this without them. They just always have my back. We're great friends. We've known each other for years, and there's that relationship is just so special. And I feel so grateful for those guys every time. They that's the only way.
Yeah, it's quite an accomplishment. There's lots of things circling around your world. And before I let you go, I wanted to ask, because you have been nominated for a Tony twice with Come From Away and Rocky, and then when Come From Away transferred to London, you won the Olivier Award. And what does it feel like because Come From Away has had such a long life and has been such a word of mouth success, which is also very rare these days. What does it feel like to be recognized that way?
It was a little bit of an outer body experience, to be honest. It was, the thing about the Tonys, they're a little nerve wracking because you're with all of your peers, and they're stressful and they're overwhelming and they're fun. And so all of us going into the Tonys together was an experience. It's a lot. And like David and Irene, that was the first time, and it can be overwhelming. And, so we were all really nervous. And I think by the time the Oliviers came around, we were so excited that we all got nominated and we were all going to go together. And I feel like none of us thought that we had any chance of winning anything. So we sort of went as a group woohoo, this is going to be fun. We're not stressed out about anything. We're not worried because we were assuming we're not going to win anyway. And we ended up having a really nice time throughout the whole process because we were relaxed. Yeah. And then I heard my name, and then a lot of people heard their names, and it just sort of kept happening. And I I'm grateful that I wasn't too prepped for it, because I think I would have been, I mean, the Royal Albert Hall is just stunning, and you know, Camilla was there, and it was a lot. So had I put all of that together, I might have fainted, but it was amazing. It was just an unbelievable evening, something I'll never forget. Gloria Estefan gave us our award when we won for Best Show, and it was just a beautiful night. And I've worked in London before, and there were a lot of people that were working on the show that were like stage managers on shows that I had worked on. So there was like this family aspect to it. And Patti LuPone came up to me and said, "I love your show." And I was like, oh my God, she knows who I am. It was wild. I had conversation with Bill Pullman and his wife afterwards, because I had done a movie with him years ago when I was a teenager. And you know, it's wild. It's wild. I felt like a fish out of water, but it was amazing.
Well, it's very well deserved, and great work that continues on with Modern Family and Katie Keene. So thank you so much for joining me, Kelly, and everyone who's watching, subscribe to Gold Derby. Make sure you keep in touch with us throughout any season. And Kelly, thank you again. It was great to talk to you.
Anytime.